Welcome back to my channel. Imagine waking up every day feeling energized, full of clarity and inner peace. No negative thoughts, no draining relationships, nothing clouding your soul. Does that sound too good to be true? Maybe you feel like you're being held back by invisible strings, preventing you from reaching your full potential. In this video, I'll show you how to cut those strings. We'll learn how to identify and avoid toxic influences in your life using the wisdom of Stoicism. Stay tuned, because the insights you'll gain today could change your life forever. Stoicism, one of the oldest and most influential philosophies in the world, offers us powerful tools to free ourselves from negative influences and find inner balance. Practiced by thinkers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, this philosophy teaches us how to maintain inner peace despite external circumstances. But before we dive in, let's take a moment to ask ourselves, what exactly are toxic influences, and how can we recognize them? Toxic influences can take many forms. They can be people who emotionally drain us, thought patterns that keep pulling us into negativity, or even environments that sap our energy. They all have one thing in common: they prevent us from reaching our full potential. Stoicism teaches us that we can recognize and control these influences by sharpening our perception and learning to let go of what we cannot control. A central aspect of Stoicism is the distinction between what we can control and what we cannot. Epictetus said, "It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about the things." This means that the way we react to external influences is crucial. We can't always prevent negative people or situations from entering our lives, but we can decide how we respond to them. Let's look at an example. Imagine you have a colleague who is constantly negative. He complains about everything, drags every situation into the negative, and criticizes others at every opportunity. Every time you interact with him, you feel drained and discouraged. A Stoic would recognize that this colleague's behavior is beyond his control. However, what he can control is his own reaction to it. Stoic philosophy would advise you to observe and consciously regulate your emotions. Instead of letting your colleague's negativity affect you, you can learn to maintain inner distance. You could, for example, apply a technique of cognitive restructuring where you recognize your colleague's negative comments for what they are, his own perspective, which doesn't have to define your reality. Another important lesson of Stoicism is the practice of apatheia, in the original sense of the word, which means not being influenced by external circumstances. Apatheia, in the Stoic sense, doesn't mean indifference, but emotional independence. It is the ability to maintain your inner peace, no matter what happens around you. This practice can help you minimize toxic influences in your life by making you less susceptible to them. But how does this work in practice? How can we apply apatheia in everyday life? Imagine you are stuck in traffic and the cars aren't moving. Instead of getting upset and wasting your energy, you could say to yourself, "I can't control the traffic, but I can control my reaction to it." You could use the situation as an opportunity to take deeper breaths, listen to music, or think about something positive. This principle of apatheia can also be applied to interpersonal relationships. For instance, if you are in a relationship where you often feel misunderstood or devalued, Stoicism can help you clearly recognize which aspects of the relationship you can control and which you cannot. Maybe you can't change how your partner behaves, but you can decide how you react to it and whether you want to continue the relationship. Another powerful tool in the Stoics' arsenal is reflection. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoics, practiced daily reflection and thought deeply about his actions. This practice helped him become aware of his weaknesses and strengths and continuously improve himself. You can also use this technique to identify toxic influences in your life. Take a few minutes each evening to reflect on your day. Were there moments when you felt overwhelmed by negative influences? How did you react? And what could you do differently in the future? This reflection can help you recognize patterns. Maybe you'll notice that certain people, places, or situations consistently trigger negative emotions in you. When you recognize these patterns, you can consciously decide how you want to deal with them. A Stoic would say it's better to avoid or minimize these influences rather than continually expose yourself to them. Another aspect of Stoicism that can help you recognize and avoid toxic influences is the idea of the dichotomy of control. This idea suggests that there are two types of things, those we can control and those we cannot. If we focus our energy and attention on the things we can control, such as our thoughts, actions, and reactions, and accept the things we cannot control, we can find inner peace. So if you realize that certain people in your life are negatively influencing you, ask yourself, can I control their behavior? If the answer is no, then it's up to you to decide whether you want to continue having these people in your life, or whether you want to reduce or even break off contact. The same applies to other toxic influences, whether it's a stressful work environment, unhealthy habits, or negative thought patterns. It's important to emphasize that Stoicism is not a philosophy of withdrawal or passivity. On the contrary, it encourages us to actively take responsibility for our own lives. If we recognize that we are exposed to toxic influences, it is within our power to do something about it. This doesn't mean that we should immediately ban all difficult relationships or challenges from our lives. Rather, it's about acting consciously and deliberately. A practical step could be to set clear boundaries. If you notice that someone in your life is constantly crossing your boundaries and negatively affecting you, then it's time to communicate those boundaries. This could mean spending less time with that person or making it clear that you won't tolerate certain behaviors. This requires courage and determination, but it is an important step towards a healthier and happier life. Another example could be recognizing and changing your own negative thought patterns. Stoicism teaches us that our thoughts are the source of our emotions. If you find yourself repeatedly falling into negative thought spirals, you can consciously question those thoughts and replace them with more positive and constructive ones. This takes practice and patience, but it can make a huge difference in your life. Stoicism also offers tools for dealing with unavoidable toxic influences. Sometimes we can't completely ban certain people or situations from our lives, whether it's because we're stuck in a difficult family situation or because we have to work in an environment we don't like. In such cases, we can learn to control our reactions and distance ourselves internally. One technique that can help is imagining that you are internally untouchable. Seneca said, a wise man is not shaken by external circumstances because he knows that his inner peace depends on nothing and no one. This inner independence can help you remain calm and composed, even in difficult situations. You can imagine building an invisible wall around yourself that protects you from negative influences. Another useful concept in Stoicism is the attitude of amor fati, which means love of fate. This idea suggests that we should accept everything that happens in life, whether good or bad, as part of our fate. Instead of fighting against circumstances, we should learn to accept and even love them because they shape and help us grow. This attitude can help you see toxic influences in a different light, not as something that destroys you, but as something that makes you stronger. Let's say you are in a difficult relationship that you can't currently leave. A Stoic would advise you to see this relationship as a challenge that gives you the opportunity to develop patience, tolerance, and emotional strength. Of course, this doesn't mean that you should stay in a harmful relationship if you have the option to leave. But it does mean that you should accept the circumstances you cannot change with serenity and wisdom. Another important principle in Stoicism is the practice of virtue. The Stoics believe that a virtuous life is the key to happiness. Virtues like wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation are not just ethical principles, but practical tools for living a fulfilling life. When you strive for these virtues, you will find that toxic influences have less power over you because you are strengthened and balanced internally. Let's look at a concrete example. Suppose you are in a work environment characterized by competition and selfishness. A Stoic would advise you to focus on your own virtues instead of being guided by the negative influences around you. You could, for example, develop the courage to stand up for what is right, even if it's unpopular. Or you could practice moderation by not engaging in power struggles, but instead seeking constructive solutions. The practice of virtue can also help you recognize and avoid toxic influences in your personal life. If you strive to lead a just and compassionate life, you will find that you want to distance yourself from people who embody the opposite. You will begin to make conscious decisions about who you spend your time with and which values you want to cultivate in your relationships. It's also important to understand that the path of Stoicism is not an easy one. It requires self-discipline, reflection, and the courage to make difficult decisions. But the reward is worth it, a life free from unnecessary stress and negativity, a life characterized by inner peace and clarity. You will find that you are less influenced by external circumstances and instead develop deep inner stability. In conclusion, I encourage you to integrate the principles of Stoicism into your own life. Start by identifying toxic influences, whether in the form of people, thoughts, or environments. Then, use the Stoic tools we discussed today, the dichotomy of control, apatheia, reflection, amor fati, and the practice of virtue to minimize or overcome these influences. Remember that you have control over your thoughts, actions, and emotions. You have the power to free yourself from toxic influences and find your way to inner peace and fulfillment. The journey may not be easy, but it's a journey worth taking. Stay strong, and remember, true freedom comes from within. Thank you for watching. If you found value in this video, don't forget to like and share, and subscribe to stay tuned for more wisdom on how to live a meaningful and peaceful life. See you next time.